If you don't want to be on YouTube, you can turn your video off.
Well, and I just want to say all of my portions today are pre-recorded, including this one. So good morning. It's at least it's morning here in Northern California. My name is Dave Zuckerman, and I am your MC this morning. I'm a former president of the Gebser Society, which meant that there was a year where I was the last person to look at his shoes when they said, "Who wants to be president?" But it's been my pleasure to be a part of this society for many years, and it's really an honor and a pleasure for me to be the MC this morning, when we're going to hear from Al Mickunas and Mike Purdy and Eric Kramer, among other people.
Yes.
But I think that by the end of today, you will see that the sort of the holy triumvirate of those three made this society happen and brought Gebser to a whole lot of folks. Eric has his hands
up. Yeah, I want to apologize to everybody about missing last weekend. I had a graduate seminar with 16 people and 3 of them were sick. So we had to cancel, so I had to make it up. My humblest apologies. I'm sorry that I missed last week. That was not very good.
Well, we're glad you're here this week. So we have a rather tight schedule today. And so the first speaker today will be Al Mickunas, and then Al and Mike Purdy will pick it up in about 45 minutes or so, talking about time and going back to origin. And then we'll have a Q&A, and then we'll have the next set of presentations. So without any further ado, I would like to welcome back to the society, Algis Mickunas. Algis, where are you?
Okay, thank you very much. I'm sorry that I missed many of the meetings that you guys had. And the reason is I have to teach. And not at home. I mean, I had to teach in Europe, in Latin America at this time. Now, what is interesting, that the first conference we had on Gebser International, it was in Athens, and attendees were, one of them was Madame Gebser, and during a reception, she took me to a dark corner and handed me a tape recording, the last recording of Jean Gebser. He had an emphysema, it was very hard to understand. And then she said, from now on, you people will carry the work, not Europeans. Handed the baton, so to speak, to us. And so it's been our honor, duty, and the privilege to carry that work. Now, of course, we cannot think that one person like Gebser had the final word. I mean, things unfold, new awareness comes into vogue and so forth. And so what I am up to is one minor level of explorations. One thing I must remind everyone of, that ever-present origin is not in the past. Integral is not somehow the latest mode of awareness. They're always present. Whether it's archaic or magic or mythological or mental and deficient mental, they are all engaged in integral understanding, except that they take one mode of awareness to interpret. Okay, for example, the magic person will not walk through trees. Okay, he or she will have to go around, no matter what. And so let me begin with the current problematic, specifically in the postmodern trends and all of that. they have strange notion that everything is constructed, and therefore everything depends on perspectivity, multi-perspectivity, multiculti, as Merkel was once called, and multidiscursivity. And each one defines what we are, and different cultures defines us differently. Everybody has different perspectives. Now, first of all, if you read Gebser, perspectivity belongs to one level of awareness. You cannot talk about my religious perspective, scientific perspective, cultural perspective. They are not perspectives. Perspective is constricted and restricted to one area, and that is spatial. I stand here on this side of a thing. I have a perspective. The perspective is not a characteristic of anything. It is a way to disclose a material object. That's it. But now, so now we have a positional perspectivity, and we have an ego position. Remember, Gebser? Okay. So now, when we disclose that there is multi-perspectivity, like to Picasso, integral, it doesn't mean that the ego, which had the perspective, did not understand integrally. Why integrally? Because when you say, I see this thing from this perspective, from this side, you already mean other perspectives and other sides. In short, while you assume that you only see from this side, the integral is already present. I see from all sides without going around. And this, when I sent Mike a paper called Before Time Began, he said, wait a minute, what do you mean before time began? Well, this is before time began because I see this thing. Before talking about sequence of walking around, I already see integrally that I can see this thing from all sides, from all perspectives, prior to temporal sequence. Next thing that comes along is integrity at this level only. Okay. Requires vision. There is visuality and vision. Why do we need a vision? I do not, no matter which moves I make, which the perspective I take, from which side I see, I do not see anything like the totality as another perspective or another side. I have a vision that this is the thing identical with itself, seen from all the perspectives and implying all the sides. So that vision, which is not an empirical phenomenon, is required. I can talk about flying around the sun, seeing it from different perspectives and different sides. It's the same thing as seeing my table. Okay? So I have integral vision that already is atemporal. Okay? Before time, I already have it. Okay? You see, I don't have to say, I remember the last perspective I just stood next to my table. Before memory. And that means before time. I'm seeing it from this perspective because other perspectives are available and already co-present as different. The multi-perspectivity that people talk about nowadays is simply a metaphor on straightforward, direct awareness of anything. Okay? It is not generalization. That's the problem. That's the issue with the Gebser. We do not generalize. Now I walked around one table, so I know how to walk around. I have to walk around another table, a third table, and generalize. Before generalization, we have that vision, and we have that co-presence of all the sides in quotes simultaneously before sequence and before my positioning in many other positions around this thing. Okay, so that's why I say before time. Temporal sequence can explicate. I can say, well, for example, this table I can walk around, okay, but I already know that I can walk around. I already know that there are other perspectives as integral indifference. Okay, so that's one level that we have to maintain. So when you use perspectivity, it will not do to say, well, my perspective on mathematics, that's not possible. I cannot walk around 2 + 2 = 4 to see how it looks from the other side. Okay. So we have to be careful what level of phenomena we're working with. Okay. I cannot walk around a myth. Okay. My perspective on myth. So how does it look from the other side? That's nonsense. Okay. So I'm using Gebser, I'm following Gebser at this level to make sure that we understand that at this level, there's perspectivity and integral perspectivity. This side means other sides and means, and now next thing is, remember Gebser talked about transparency. This side, which already says there are other sides, different from this side is transparent with different sides. This side means, if you recall in Gebser's writing, he trashed Heidegger, but he said Husserl is right on, and Husserl dealt with precisely this question. This side, empirically, I have a flat surface, that's it. When I say this side, I'm saying much more. I'm already speaking integrally. Okay? So any perception is integral, even at a spatial level, even at a minimal temporal level. Okay, so now, next thing that is interesting, and that includes all philosophies, the integral vision. If you recall, Einstein constructed, in quotes, constructed a new theory, a new hypothesis, and everybody was jumping for joy. And it was not, in quotes, proven. And scientists said, well, Mr. Einstein, I guess you're trying to solve the problem given in Michelson-Morsley's experiments with light. Einstein's answer was, I never heard of them. But he had a vision that could correlate all kinds of examples. Remember, when scientists speak, when we speak every day, we already have a vision seen through a great variety. That's why we use the term for example. Okay? We have visuality, which gives us examples. Einstein had one example, but the vision was more than any example. It's like one's vision of what a thing is can be exemplified across the universe. It will be still integral identity in the vision and in integrating all the perspectives on all the sides. So that kind of integration is available to, and we do it all the time. We even walking around a building, walking around a mountain, walking around a lake, we have the same kind of a kinesthetic understanding that there is on the other side of the lake. Okay. Okay, so that's integral. Now, next thing, the transparency has many layers, but what is the principle of it is that prior to association of similarities, we have transparency through differences. Remember the great dance Derrida, Viva la différence. We know that there is a difference. Well, we've known that since Plato. Okay. Identity difference, permanence change, being nothing, one many. So we already have the kind of understanding that the identity cannot be had without a difference. Remember, even in Gebser, you have a linguistic root, and it cannot maintain its identity without splitting into polarity and later on into the difference either or logic. So they are not associations like similarities. In fact, they are transparent only because they're different. It is like talking about the now. The now is not possible without before and after. And before and after are only possible, and we are aware of it because they're different. They are transparent. It's like saying, I hear a high note. The high note would not be high without it being different from the low note. So that is the kind of, no matter what awareness you take, it will be polarized, differentiated, and that's what allows for transparency. Now that's one level. Now we talk about what history, past and future and so on. And that seems to be a temporal happening. As you know, you studied civilizations and cultures. We know that not all traditions are historical. Only modern Western tradition is historical. Thucydides, in quotes, was a historian, but he was not a historical historian. Okay, there were events happening, wars and all of that, but they did not change anything essentially. That is, humans remained humans. Now, a modern subject invents history and invents itself, and that's why we talk about, well, the electrical materialism accounts for that there are different stages of humanity, and now we're going to create a new human being, okay, brand new. So then you raise a question, why do you call that a human being? New humanity. Unless there is something identical, continuous. Otherwise, you will not recognize the other. Okay? That means we have, despite our variety, despite racisms, despite ethnicisms, we recognize the other even when we deny the other as a human. The preoccupation by racists with the other really confirms that the other is most important for them as the other. In short, to call a dog, no big deal. But when you call a human being a dog, you recognize that other as human. Irrespective of evolution, well, how would you say it? It doesn't matter whether I'm fallen angel or risen ape, I'm a human. And that's the principle, what the Greeks called arche. That is, its denial requires its inclusion. In short, you cannot get rid of it. So when we say there's each culture defines humans differently, it's their own business, they define identity as a given in vision across great variety. Otherwise, of course, now, as you know, the complaint around the globe is, well, human rights, it's an invention of modern Western white dead men. Okay, and then they want to be recognized as humans. In their denial, they recognize our vision of each other as humans, despite variations. Say, well, he's a bad example of a human being. Okay, bad example, but still a human being. So that, so to all of us, my colleague with whom I formed the Husserl Circle, Jose Huerta Jorda, when somebody said, well, Jose, when I look at you, where are you? Jose would say, look past me on my right side and you'll see me. In short, that vision is required. And that is made, that means we are transparent as empirical things with that vision. Next thing, and then I started with the question of history and so forth, because in communications, you people are very much engaged in the intersubjectivity. Now, before historical time, we are in quotes, in touch. We're aware of others, implicitly or explicitly, without asking when and where. When you teach and say, well, Newton's discovery is this and that, nobody says, no, when was that, what time, and what century, and where was Newton, and so on. We already see as he sees the world in terms of gravity and so on. So dating comes later. When I run into a problem, which is every day, my first consolation is I talk to Socrates, because that's never gonna, you know, they would run rings around anyone without telling you that you're right or wrong. So I never met Socrates, but at a level of awareness, I'm aware of Socrates' arguments about some topic. I'm aware of Plato's awareness. That means I don't have to be psychological. I don't say, well, I don't know how Plato felt about justice. Gee, I have to get a psychiatrist. He talked about justice, was aware of the subject matter, as I'm aware of the subject matter. Maybe my language will interpret it a bit differently, but we're still dealing with the same identical question. And we have access directly to them. And that is why I call that polycentric awareness, many-centered. In quotes, I borrow Plato's, Aristotle's, Newton's, anybody else's. I love borrowing from Cervantes, Don Quixote, because their literatures at times say more than theories. Okay, I mentioned the question of being human. Now, they just came out with a couple of volumes and saying, you know, psychiatry showed that Cervantes was sort of a off the wall and out of sight, and he wrote these strange things. But when you take to the level of awareness, you discover that Don Quixote was dealing with various things. First, is a guy sitting in his library in an impoverished province, and he was reading texts. Now, those texts talked about knighthood, nobility, honor, truthfulness. So now he is at the verge of what survivors called Iron Age. Now, Iron Age is rough. Lying, cheating, stealing, exploiting is the norm of the day. Honor is totally irrelevant. Truth, justice are completely gone. So now, what is Don Quixote up to? He is traveling the countryside, looking like a strange knight, but he is looking through the Iron Age, the people of Iron Age. There is an Aldonza, a barmaid. Through her, she sees a woman, a noble, honorable, respectful, having self-respect. In short, he sees a human being and not a degraded someone in that age. So he's making transparent through particular society, particular age, what we are missing. He's not crazy. He elevates them to their true humanity. He has a vision, and that vision that he has allows him to see through those people that he encounters. Okay? In fact, he's wondering what kind of a strange world this is, you know. In fact, he talks about all kinds of shamans, all kinds of charlatans who have made this world like an illusion. This could not be a real human world. He makes us become transparent to ourselves, that we have this other level. It is given in vision and not in empirical phenomena. Okay? Now, if someone in our age, let's say, let's say a big corporation, they hire you to be a vice president of sales. And the president says, okay, the sales people are coming, you provide hotel rooms and provide entertainment. And he says, you know what salespeople like, they're away from wives. So now he's telling me, I'm getting paid, that I should do that. What if I said no? What if I said, I cannot degrade those ladies? Even if they want to sell themselves, I cannot, because I see that they are women, honorable, truthful, having self-respect, in fact, looking for self-respect. And Mr. President, if you ask me to do that, you are degrading yourself, lowering yourself. You lost your humanity, or at least you are not, you see it, but you deny it. Okay? So my, as vice president, action would be quixotic. I would be acting like a Don Quixote. I see through you. Okay. And you know, and I'm disclosing. I'm making you transparent to who you really are. Okay. So that, see, for Gebser, transparency is not some mysterious thing. We live it every day. Okay. Now, I was at a farmer's market today, and things became transparent. I have a colleague, and during the summer he disappeared, and I haven't seen him. Eric knows George Weckman. Yeah, he's a scholar, sort of a scholar in the religions and so on. So, and I saw him. Now, here it is. I haven't seen him all summer. I saw him dramatically changed. but in a flash, I saw him as having changed without memory, prior to time. I saw through his contemporary right now, who was in front of me, that he is the same despite the change, despite my saying, I have to bring in my memory how he looked then. I saw through his current position, very kind of ravaged and very aged. And I saw the same George Weckman prior to memory. So we see through. And we would not be able to talk about, 5 days later, somebody is with a beard. I say, well, what the hell is that? To look at the image, I don't know. Empirically, I say, well, you look different with your beard on. I see through. So empirical phenomena for Gebser are transparent with a vision, integral vision. No matter how many variants we offer, we see through them. And in fact, like I mentioned, we treat them as examples. Okay? It's like saying, for example, Einstein's vision was proven by this experiment, for example. That's one example. There could be many, great variety. And so integral vision is a requirement. Now, so when I deal with anything, as I mentioned, polycentrically, I borrow, in quotes, awareness of others without even asking when and where. When somebody wrote a book, when I use the word idea, I'm already talking with Plato. Okay, he disclosed that form, idea, morphe, and so on. And it seems like obvious, right? But I already am in touch with the vision that Plato had. He didn't mention that he has a vision, and that is where we share visions before we share examples. Although through examples, we can say we see the vision transparently. Okay, now, so this is at our level. History is not past. It is transparent atemporally. I see others through how they look at the world, how they articulate some phenomena, and that articulation becomes extension of my articulation. Even when I get contested, I see what they mean. I see my problem, and I must admit that I missed a point or something like that, and I'm very grateful. I'm being corrected by Plato every day, and by Socrates, and by anyone I encounter. But I see transparently my shortcomings through others. If I were solus ipsa, all by myself, I would have nothing but truth, because there would be no difference. No identity as the other who shows the difference and my shortcoming. Okay. So that's the polycentric, and we can call it polylogical awareness that is not in the past, but I couldn't find any better word except for depth. I see through others in depth. Okay. When I meet someone, I don't say, I have to remember who it was. I see through the current phenomenon, the depth and identity. Okay. So the depth is prior to time, prior to sequence. That's why, Mike, I said, before time began, we already have awareness that can be temporally explicated, as a temporal horizon. You take a team, I see, so to speak, what capitalism is, but when if I want to explicate capitalism, one day I have to write 3 volumes of Marx, okay? One working day, 5 years. But I see that working day, okay, what it is in that situation. So that awareness is always integral, but in the human terms and social terms, we might introduce time. And so there's another thing, mentioned memory. Memory is required only when you have sequential time. Okay. Remember, again, we can talk about Plato, Hume, whatever you like. When one talks about memory, what does it mean to talk about memory? Well, I see someone and then I remember how he or she looked before. Or when I say I remember someone, and then you take Hume and said, well, memory is a faded image of what you have seen before clearly. Okay, faded image. So now, since I don't have the original now, how can I compare this faded image with a clear vision that I had 5 years ago? That means you already have a vision before you can compare faded images of something that you don't have original of. In short, memory requires that vision before time. Otherwise, there's no memory. It's gone. Because the vision you have is, the image, the faded image you have is now. It's not in the past. So when it says from the past, you have to have a vision of what it is. So I'm just like I said, that one level I'm exploring the visuality, vision, and transparency. Now, taking the thing one more step, because I have 5 more minutes, and it is like this: when we speak cosmically, I must remind that awareness of things, that is consciousness, is not derived from things. Awareness of things discloses things. Okay? No cause can make me say, well, the future might look like this. You can X-ray all the brains, X-ray every cell, you will not find the future. Okay, that is an awareness which has a very important feature. When we say in astronomy that we are waiting, in our awareness, waiting for data coming from the past. Now, how can something come from the past when the past is gone, in course, in reality? And yet we're waiting, we're calculating in all kinds of ways. So here you have in awareness overlapping of time. I'm waiting for data from the past. My waiting from the future and the past are integrated as different but given correlatively, not one after the other. I already have that. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to do science. In fact, I talk to astronomers and say, damn it, you guys are funny. He says, now I don't understand anything about time. Well, you talk about 5.5 billion years ago. How do you access empirically? You're waiting for data from the future, which will signify the past. Okay? Because when the data comes, it'll be right there. when you say it's from the past, you already have awareness, which is broader than the data presented to you. Okay. The kind of wrinkles in time. You meet somebody, says, "What are you doing?" "Well, I'm looking for something that I saw here yesterday." Now, you don't see that something. So it's not there yet. Yesterday is gone, and yet you can say, "I'm looking for something that I saw yesterday." I mean, it's overlapping awareness of temporalities. So the sequential time is kind of passé, okay? All right. So now, but when I'm waiting, it means that things are already happening. Okay, like if I say, bienvenido or Guaranido, Guatemalan guy, very good friend of everybody. He called me, says, "I am coming to visit." So now I'm waiting that he will be here Wednesday. So I'm waiting. Wednesday is not yet. So it's in the future. But he is already on the way. Co-present. That he'll come to my point, that's linear time. But he's already integrally co-present as on the way to my future. And his past is already on the way. So we are already together as awareness. Although then we can line it up. Well, he's not here yet. I'm waiting. I'm buying beer because he likes my beer. Okay. Guinness and so on. So here is already transparency. My waiting is already transparent with his on the way. Okay. And that means that cosmic time, the present, is also a depth, not just now. As Eugen Fink said, well, we talked about sequence, moment to moment to moment, now moment. As I remember, the now moment is the whole universe, not just a point in time. It covers everything, integrates everything. And so the kind of opening up of awareness leads to, make a final point, leads to the question that the vision, the final vision that Gebser offers, transparency, is integral in such a way that when I open up my dialogue, polylogue with others, without asking where or when. I don't know when Buddha was, maybe yesterday, maybe tomorrow, but I'm talking to Buddha. I try to understand his awareness. I integrate, even if I say I don't understand, because before contradiction, there's sense. It makes sense. Even if we disagree, even say that's nonsense, we understand that it is nonsense, okay? Like analytic philosophers say, well, square circle is a contradiction, and therefore it's false, it's nonsense. Say, but we make sense that there cannot be a square circle. It makes sense before contradiction. And so sense making is what we experience through others. And that means no matter with whom we communicate, at what time, we take for granted that we understand their efforts to make sense. And those efforts expand our horizons and integrate them in their differences. And that integral moment is, I use a metaphor, vertical. It's ever present. No matter what I will read, with whom I will talk, say, well, yeah, your argument or your presentation, it's kind of funny, it's comical, like people laugh at Don Quixote, but it makes sense. Okay, that is comical. Okay. So that integrum is ever present, but it is not a unity. Unity I can look at as one object. The thing has a unity. So I have a objective, in quotes, intentionality. But the integrum is a vision without any specific characteristics, whether it's ideal, whether it's empirical, whatever. Empirical ideal can be dealt with. But the integrum as a vision has no specific characteristics. If it did, it would no longer be the integral awareness. So we are always in that awareness. Anytime I talk to Socrates or Newton or anybody else or Don Quixote, I'm already in that integral mode without having to recognize it. I already have a vision that it makes sense what they say. Okay? Even if it's nonsense. So the ever-present origin is that integrum that allows us to understand one another even in our misunderstanding. And that's why humanity cannot be denied, irrespective of all the idiots who make sense in their idiocy. All their idiots. Okay. And there, a final word. Why are there racists? Why there are nationalists, Nazis? They are trying to elevate themselves above others. And when someone who is very different is there with his dignity, nobility, pride, honor, honorable, and so on, that person, that whether it's Nazi or racist, cannot stand that because it reminds him that he became a minor functionary in a system and lost his humanity. So he has to destroy the other. He hates that reminder. Okay? Every Nazi did that. Anyone who challenged, not to try, but dignity and honesty and honor were destroyed immediately. Every dictatorship does that, okay? Because they hate that reminder that I lost something that made me human. Okay, well, thank you very much. I'm overstepping my time. I overstepped time.
Well, I want to thank you, Algis. Every one of us owes you a great deal of debt because every one of us who has read Ever-Present Origin in English would not have done so without your efforts. Every one of us who has attended a Gebser conference would not have been able to do so without your efforts. It's an honor to know you and call you friend, and it's a little bit awkward for me to tell you to stop talking. So I'm very grateful to you for rejoining us and for sharing these marvelous, marvelous ideas. But I have to be temporal as today's MC. So I'm going to invite you to stay, Al, and for
I'll be here.
Mike Purdy, one of Al's students, to join us. And Al and Mike are going to talk for about 40 minutes or so until 10:30 my time, talking about time and going back to origin. So Mike, please unmute and join us.
One thing about Mike, okay, he wrote a dissertation on Merleau-Ponty in communications. And his director, I was on his committee, the communications people were still worried. What the hell is this phenomenology? What's this hermeneutics? Okay. And so during the defense, his dissertation director, Ray Wagner, said, well, Mr. Purdy, what you're saying in your dissertation is that what we have been doing in communications up till now is nonsense. It's bull. And poor Mike, he's defending his dissertation. Oh, no, Professor Wagner, that's not what I'm trying to say. But that sounds to me you're saying that. Finally, Mike said, I'm saying that, damn it. And the committee says, we agree.
Well, Mike went on and did okay. Mike was the webmaster for Gebser for many years. Mike was the editor of Integrative Explorations, the journal. Mike has been a stalwart participant and leader behind the scenes, never really calling much attention to himself. But without Mike, a lot of stuff wouldn't have gotten done over the years. I can say that I have leaned on Mike many, many times as a reviewer for Gebser conferences, for Gebser publications. Mike just is a doer. And so I'm going to be quiet now and let Mike and Al talk.
So here we are, right on time, taking time, two old timers.
Temporal.
Two old timers taking time for the time being to discuss time in a timely manner. Set your clocks. So I got a little brief here. So we can appreciate that time is embedded in our language, embedded in our culture. And that's what this little riff was about, is how present time is in this perspectival consciousness. But our concerns here are more encompassing. They integrate and reveal transparently that time is about something different, like not psychological, not mental, or not just. One statement we don't hear, as I looked at all the ways we talk about time, is, oh, I'll give you some time. You can't give time because it's not a thing. And Al has gone through this in papers, especially on Augustine that I was reading recently. The strategies for dealing with time seem to be two primarily. One is represented by Jay Griffith, a sideways look at time, which compares and contrasts linear time with what he calls wild time. It could be Alaskan tribal cultures or whatever. It's kind of a simplistic thing, and it still is very subjective. We want to get beyond that. And the other is folks like Ian Mills, a Gebserian, who first talks about the tribal difference with the Borneo tribes, right? And again, it's that same contrast of perspectival and ever-present mythic, as Al would say, right? That's what I got from your paper before time, was that there's an ever-present mystic and storytelling and so forth. So Ian contrasts that. And then the other theme that seems to come up over and over is Dogen, Chungsu, and that Eastern perspective of the moment, right? But Al would say it's not a point moment. It's an open, ever-present moment with horizons coming and going, pulsating, saturated to some degree or other. But he also writes of the moment of perception, thus, which is extended and open, with duration, succession, simultaneity, which is not temporal here because we're bracketing being, we're bracketing even flow. Al would say in some of his papers that flow already has an implication of movement in a procession. And then there are the quantum views. The farthest reach there is that the equations of the universe don't have to include time. And again, I would go back to Einstein, who who really was great with examples and even creating examples to challenge people. So here we need to challenge each other, right, Al?
Okay, go.
I set you up well.
I don't remember what you just said.
Oh, too bad. You missed something good.
It was brilliant. Play it again, Mike.
Well, it's just an integration of the things that I've been reading of Al and other people. I've been reading intensely for about a year now about time. And it was built on a paper I did at Gebser in Monterey, probably 8-10 years ago. I put away because I didn't feel like I was ready to publish it, or it wasn't complete. But now, with Al's insight, I think I have it.
Yeah. One thing that others, including people like Russell, like Borges, Eugen Fink, Russell said we're in a quandary. Because when we speak of time as a beginning and movement, the universe began then, and now it's moving toward the future. So the question that Russell raised, Borges raised, and Eugen Fink raised, I was in the seminars when we talked about it. Said, well, is there anything else outside of the universe or apart from the universe? Well, of course, we don't know anything else. So then the question is, so if there is nothing apart from the universe, in what time does the universe move from past to present to future?
Yeah, and that's interesting.
Time.
That's
Assume
interesting.
time cosmic, which is not directional.
Yeah.
And it's not a box.
Yeah.
Not a
And
beehive.
The quantum people that I read, and I have a couple of favorites, Rovelli, Italian, and Kastner, still want to have an arrow of time. Right? Yeah.
Arrow of time. But that must transgress the universe. Because, the universe is reaching into the future. What is that future into which the universe is? What kind of a time is that future for the universe? If there's nothing more than universe, so what the hell is the time that universe is moving into? And that's the cosmic question, okay?
Yeah, can you expand a little bit more on what you mean by cosmic?
Yeah. No matter, because remember, we're dealing with awareness. And our awareness is always how could I say? A transcendental medium.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let me give you an example. When we have a vision, which doesn't look like anything. Okay, why it doesn't look like anything? 2 + 2 is 4, is the vision. But the mark 2 + 2, or in the words 2 + 2, or my sounds, are very different. But the vision is not identical with any of them. Okay. All right. So now, when we speak of time and the future, we have a vision, what people call open horizons, that we're aware of open horizons. We're aware of possibilities which are not yet realized. That awareness mediates what the universe looks now and what it will look probably in a billion years from now. Okay? That mediation is transcendental. Give you an example, 2 examples. Remember my good friend, Saint Augustine. Now, what's his problematic? His problematic is time. Ubi temps, where is time, he asks, okay? And he finds it in the soul. But now the soul, as he says, is in excess of itself. Why? because the soul is in contact with a vision of a divine being. And temporal events are imago Dei, images, but the soul is between them, reflects the vision of the divine permanence and the changing things. Okay? He is a transcendental consciousness which does not belong to either one. Okay? Although he sees transparently one through the other, he sees the vision through the changing things, and the changing things as examples of a vision. Okay? And Plato, there is the world of ideas, and who knows that? Demiurgos, a primordial creator who looks at the standards and shapes the world in terms of them, the temporal world. So that, you see, that is the consciousness which is nowhere to be found. It's between anything. Okay, and read Augustine, and he's totally tormented. How did I leave this ultimate being to become temporal? But the soul is not temporal. It knows time. It knows the ultimate. It's swinging between them. Okay, so that's why the atemporality of awareness. Okay, even at this level, whether it's Bertrand Russell or Borges, well, Russell swings between there's the beginning of the universe moving, and then moving into what time. So
Yeah.
Transcendental awareness is that between everything. And one more thing, maybe somebody will want to discuss, in person or privately. That awareness is a reflection, but we don't know anything about what reflection is. Okay, what I mean is this. Take Plato's example. Plato is trying to show humanity what reality is. So now we find ourselves in Plato's cave. There are people tied to a wall, and on the opposite wall there are figures. Now, all you see empirically are moving figures, flat two-dimensional. That's empiricism. But once Plato says these are shadows, you already transgressed the visual. Shadows of statues. Statues are images of things. Things are images of what? The vision. See, no, Plato never said, I think this. Plato was the medium consciousness, which led us from shadows to statues, to things all the way into what he called ideas, okay? Standards, archai. So he was led by a vision which he didn't announce. He didn't have to, because once you name, you see, that's a beauty part of philosophy. Plato did not say, I name them shadows. The world spoke. The phenomena spoke. Suddenly these flat figures become shadows, and they are shadows because there's something else in the world. So that's reflection, which Plato does not explicate. No one has explicated when we get into the region of reflection, we don't know where we are. There's a volume coming out called, what is that called? Reflection, vision, no, visuality through vision and time. Yeah, when we reflect upon time, we're not in time. We don't know where we are.
And Augustine would say, God forbid we live the world integrally.
Yeah.
Let's come back.
he's already integrating vision and phenomena.
Well, that's what I want to come back to, because you use this word vision, and I want to see how you contrast that with the ever-present mythic, which I'm realizing permeates the world. There's this stew of consciousness.
Yeah, we know that world, and we live that world every day through variation of our kinesthetic awareness. So now, what we have to introduce is this, that most interpreters of civilizations and awareness are very static. Okay, but if you introduce kinesthetic awareness, and it's awareness, my walking around this thing is movement. I'm not aware of that movement, but that movement is the condition for my seeing other side. That movement is consciousness. It's like any creature that moves. That movement is structure of consciousness. Okay? So the rhythmic movement is one articulation of kinesthetic world. You see what I'm saying, the dynamics of it. When we say, well, there's a forest and there trees are in their positions. So now when I go past a forest, the positions change. What was on my left becomes behind. Those that were in front now becomes on my left. The movement, so the changing among the trees also changes my position. I'm integrated in that world through my movement and the movement of things. Okay. So, we have the convenience. Well, cosmically speaking, I came back, our planet comes back to the same spot every year. The sun goes around the galaxy, comes back, never come back to the same spot. You will never come back to the same room because the things are moving. So when I travel, I say, well, you're back to the same place. I said, no, this is not the same place. The sun has moved, our planet has moved, the galaxy has moved. And so we are, that's why we're integral in a world without opposite, because our position depends on the position of things in the world. And their position depends on our movements. So that dynamics is Gebser's integral, where clouds are exploding, okay, and things like that.
So vision is just like a metaphoric here, and
vision is not, when people talk about, well, linear time is visual. No, our vision is not linear. We look around, we bounce up and down, When we dance, vision is dancing. My vision is still linear.
Yeah, to a dancing God, huh?
Yeah. So see, we take one fragmented understanding. Well, we have vision, we have hearing, we have taste, we have touch, and they are distinct senses.
Yeah.
Nowhere are they distinct. My dancing is just as visual as audio, and my vision is as much audio as my touch is musical.
Yeah, and you move from consciousness as a kind of I want to say a field term, to awareness, and even in Guatemala you'd use conscience. Right?
Yeah. Well, it is a conscience is sort of a what to do. Mm-hmm. Because there's a correlation in many. If you're a theist, your conscience will function in terms of that world understanding. Okay, theistic. In theory, I mean, we can separate theory from conscience, from action, but in practice, people always say, well, I'm an atheist, everything goes, okay? It's like Dostoevsky, if God is dead, everything is permitted, okay?
Yeah, or Dostoevsky, I was
Yeah,
just
my
reading.
conscience now is clear, I can think, okay, it's still
Yeah.
conscience, okay?
Dostoevsky was in the Notes from the Underground. He was saying, people aren't stupid. They're just ungrateful, phenomenally ungrateful.
Yeah. But he says, me too. I'm grateful too.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
At least he dared. But there's another thing, you know, Dostoevsky, entire Russian writers tradition betrayed the Russian Revolution, because when Marxism-Leninism appeared, Russian Revolution died. See, Marxism-Leninism was not a revolution. It was change of heads of state. Empires have emperors, and they fight it out. The son chops the head off his father. He becomes an emperor. That's fine. That's their business. And sometimes what Kautila in the Shastra in India calls, and there are, of course, opportunists. Well, there's a little chaos in the empire. The opportunists jump in, get rid of the heads of state, empire, and they become emperors themselves.
Yeah.
I mean, emperor owns everything, owns the land, owns the people, owns everything, and his word is a law. Lenin takes over, he owns the land, he owns the people, everything belongs to the state, that's him. There was no revolution, just change of emperors. Stalin was more imperial than the Tsars, okay. So, and the only thing is, you know, that to protect yourself against some opportunists who are going to chop your head off.
Yeah, so much for evolution, right?
Yeah, I mean, there was no Russian Revolution, I'm saying.
Yeah, no, I read about that recently. It was horrible, just horrible.
Yeah.
So I wonder what we haven't talked about. We talked about Augustine, but come back to Husserl, because once you get deep into Augustine, you've got to come back to Husserl, to the bracketing of being, to
yeah.
epoche and all.
We, as an awareness, prior to the sequential, even prior to having specific focus, we constantly, I call that term, constantly surge toward the world. I mean, you walk down the street, things deploy themselves, and you focus on one, and then you remember something. Then you introduce reflection, time, and so forth. But that time is not temporal, okay? Again, there's a difference between self and ego.
Yeah,
okay.
Right.
When I get, we can deny an ego. Okay? You know what I did yesterday, that wasn't really me. I mean, I'm a nice guy. Let's see, he gets started. It says, okay.
I'm still here. You're still here. Did we lose
I'm still
everybody?
here, but nobody else.
Yeah, did we lose
I'm
something?
still here.
Okay.
People.
Uh,
Yeah,
Yeah,
we're
I
still
think
here.
that-
We just can't see
Okay.
each other.
Somebody took over they made their desktop.
Yeah, it's
Oh, there we go.
it's fixed now. Guys, just so you know, you have about 12 minutes left.
Okay.
Yeah. You see, what at issue is this. What phenomenology has discovered is precisely that awareness of the world is not derivable from causes. It discloses the world in many ways. Perspective that I take is not a thing, is not a characteristic of anything. It's not a color of anything. It's a way to disclose a physical object. The physical object does not cause me to form perspectives. I'm sitting here, I can sit here forever, but I want to see the other side, but I already know implies this side implies different sides. So I'm already in integral awareness. That awareness, the other side doesn't cause me to see, to go and look for it. I mean, because I don't see it yet. But the meaning of it is already present in my awareness, which is not a cause.
A transparency.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's phenomenological, what you would call researches. And that awareness is very, at times, so complex that you pull the hair you don't have anymore. But that's why it's called transcendental. Okay, look, scientists, linguists, logicians say, well, there's a meta language which can account for all languages. But there's another guy who says, no, my meta language is more inclusive. And they argue on the basis of what meta language they look at both meta languages. There is an awareness which is like comparative civilizations. If I compare everything in terms of my civilization, then I don't have to compare. I'm just repeating my civilization. But if I do comparisons, I don't belong to any. Postmoderns. Well, you are a product of cultural unconscious. Well, so are you. So how do you know that we're products of cultural unconscious? I always remind them of Kant's self-inclusion, principle of self-inclusion. And that means if I claim that all theories are results of given material conditions, economic, then your theory is equally, include yourself, equally a result of current material conditions. So if I'm living in capitalist material conditions, and my theory, no matter which one, is reflecting capital materialist conditions. Marx was capitalist. He did not live in communist society. He did not reflect communist material conditions. He reflected capitalist conditions. And so his theory, if he is honest, simply is capitalist theory. One more capitalist theory.
Yeah. Maybe one last question.
5 minutes.
Yeah, one last question. I was going to say, somebody put on the chat that we should talk about the mythic and temporal. And actually, that was the last question I was going to ask you about. Well, there's several, but one was before time.
Yeah, but you see, mythical as cosmic.
Yeah, that's what I want to get at.
Yeah.
I always talk about that. Even the science, even the integral is cosmic.
Yeah, cosmic in the sense that they're rhythmic. Let's talk about Shiva. Okay, he's a cosmic dancer. Okay, he destroys and creates. Okay, so integrates the destruction and creativity as mutually required. That's transparency is already there. Mutual transparency. So that integrates the destruction and creation of the universe as any other awareness. Whether it's Augustine, there's a imago Dei, created images, and then the creator. That difference and the integration of both is there. It's not, because you see, not that mythical has another time. It is integral.
Yeah.
Just as much as logic says, either or, either black or white. Well, one cannot be given without the other.
Yeah,
Okay.
and I think of it as a stew, and there are different blends or mixes of consciousness. One may be more dominant and then fade into the background.
Yeah. The dominant becomes, it's like saying music is a system of a sequence of notes.
Yeah.
Well, music doesn't follow sequence.
No, I love music. Dance, right?
It is just as much visuality as much as audiality. You can interpret it visually in quotes sequence of notes, but if you listen to it, the sequence in quotes will be there on the surface, but you say, wait a minute, that sound isn't over yet. The new sound comes up. So how come that sound is not on a note? It says it's gone, okay, passed in the visual. But in audiality, that's not the case. So the past in audiality is not gone, and future is not yet. Just as much as on the note that I see the sequence and I see the whole sequence.
And I'll finish with in Athens when we finished with our philosophy. We went to the bar, drank and danced. We'll finish it there. How's that?
I thank you very, very much, Algis and Mike. Thank you. We're going to take about a 7-minute break. We will
See, we saved 7 minutes.
We'll resume at 1:30 the hour. I have 5 questions in the hopper right now, and we'll start with those at 1:30.
Okay. 7 minutes.
Yeah.
Or are we now into questions, Mike? Mike disappeared. Wow, this
Mike
is
is right.
miraculous.
Mike is right here.
Mike is in the dark.
I'm just going to go get another cup of coffee.
Okay, I'll get a glass. Oh, it's at 1:30. I'll get a beer.
All right. See you in a minute.
Yeah. Okay. Not. It says 7 minutes. Okay.